Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew.
Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that will focus on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Good Tuesday morning, progressives, and welcome to the January 28th. We're almost done with the month. I shouldn't say done with the month, but we've successfully gotten through. It's January 28th, 2025, guys, and this is Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Catch us on Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, YouTube, Twitter stream, and iHeartRadio, and email me at richard@wcpta20.com. Devin just fixed the headphones in here. They were broken. Yeah, guys, send me emails. I love your emails, and I do my best to get back with you as quickly as I can. Some shout-outs to some of you guys, Jennifer, and to John out in California, and to Dave up in upstate New York, and another Dave in just outside of Boston. Thanks to you guys for the emails that you send to me and certainly to other folks from the show. And you, as always, catch all of our shows by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. There you can get Choose View short version and long version, and most definitely catch up with my great colleague, Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, driving it home with Patty Vasquez, the big picture with Edwin Eisendrath, and, of course, out Chicago. Go over to our heartlandsignal.com digital platform and catch all of our good, cool, fun stuff that we have over there. Today, from 2 to 5, Joan Esposito will be taking your calls and talking to Chris Lehman, D.C. Bureau Chief for The Nation, The Atlantic's Adam Serwer, Evanston Mayor Daniel Biss, and Heartland Signal's Rich Eberwine with 3 stories you might have missed from our digital newsroom, live, local, and progressive, weekdays 2 to 5 p.m. on WCPT AM 820. Tonight, 5 to 7, Patty Vasquez will be joined by Stephanie Gangsey, a Village of Bartlett trustee who is running for re-election, so we got to get behind that. Car guy Tom Appel, host of the Consumer Guide Car Stuff podcast, and Jenny Walsh, author of the new historical fiction novel Ace, Marvel Spy, a novel of Alice Marble. Driving it home with Patty Vasquez, weeknights 5 to 7 Central on WCPT 820. And just to let you guys know, tomorrow I'll be talking with my contributor at Choose Views, Kurt Mullett, also known as Hoosier Blue 63, and DEI expert Dante King, who will be talking about, and by the way, he's the assistant professor at the Mayo Clinic College of Medicine and Science and author of The 400-Year Holocaust, White America's Legal, Psychopathic, and Sociopathic Black Genocide and Revolt Against Critical Race Theory. Dante's been with us before, brilliant dude, and it'll be great to have him on tomorrow, and of course, chatting with our good friend Kurt Mullett. Our podcast, of course, reminders, Choose Views. We have 2 of them, full episodes, and Choose Views featured interviews. And you can subscribe to one or both. And the podcasts are available most certainly on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Amazon, and TuneIn. Just search for Choose Views with Richard Chew or get the links by visiting heartlandsignal.com/choose-views. And we've got some good stuff over there. But by all means, guys, if you're listening live, listen weekdays from 2 to 5 p.m. at AM 820 or tune in from heartlandsignal.com or tell Alexa, play WCPT from TuneIn. There you go. That's how you can do it. So, getting you guys off to a good start this morning, and most definitely we've got some work to do, y'all. We've got some work to do. We were, I guess my question that I'm going to ask everybody this morning, and by the way, our guest today, as I said, we're going to be talking with tomorrow we'll be with Kurt Mullett, our friend from Hoosier Blue 63, and Dante King. But today, Josh Neufeld and Carmen Noble will be with us, which is going to be exciting to chat with the 2 of them about, believe it or not, of all things, comics and journalist resources. So it'll be fun to chat with them. And then in the 7 o'clock hour, we will be in the 7:30 hour, we'll be talking with Emma Fisher, Deputy Director and Chief Operating Officer at the Climate Cabinet. So we'll be touching a couple different buttons this morning to talk to different folks about things that are happening in our community as we try to bring you. So the question I'm going to ask you guys, I'd like to get your responses on this. It's a simple question, but it's one that's important to me to ask you, and then we'll slip over to Choose Views News for a quick moment before we go to break. But here's a question I want to ask you guys. How are you surviving, and how have you survived this first week of Trump? It's been a week and a day, if you will. I'd like to know how you guys are surviving. How are you dealing with what's coming at you, whether it be through digital media, if you're watching any mainstream media, if you're listening to my show and others. How are you dealing with that which you're seeing that Trump has done in 5 days? I'd like to know how you're coping and what I can do to add some context to what you're doing. And maybe what you're doing is something that can be shared with other people. So call in and let us know what you're doing, how you're doing it. Send a text, whichever you choose. But we'd definitely like to find out a little bit about what you guys are doing and how you guys have been surviving this first week of the quote-unquote shock and awe. I'm going to talk about a handful of those things today. And some of it's in the category of we told you so. But also in the category of things that we should be looking at trying to change. And then a few clips that Devin and I put together that we had for you yesterday, but we had a little issue with our phones and just some connectivity. And then some things that came about that I thought would be good for you to hear. So we'll be getting to those as well. But for now, let's kind of bring you up to speed on some things that are happening in and around our world, and so we can keep you guys posted. Choose Views, here we go. New food insecurity is happening, unfortunately. A growing number of employed Americans are struggling to feed their families, ushering in a, quote, new era in food insecurity, according to Feeding America executive Emily Engelhardt. That's because in the past 5 years, grocery prices have surged by roughly as much as they did in the 15 years preceding the pandemic, 28%. This is driving more of the middle class to strained food banks, already strained food banks, while the Federal Reserve struggles to bring down prices without killing jobs. Now, this is the key thing, the past 5 years. So 5 years ago, who was in office, Devin? Was Joe Biden in office 5 years ago? Okay, so there you go, guys. It started during the newly elected Trump presidency, his first term. That's the fact. Those are the facts. Accelerated by the pandemic. Just so you know, for those who are out there saying, but he's going to bring prices down. Let's talk about who was in office when prices started to go up. But there you go. We have to pull for the folks that are having to use the food banks and do what we can to support the efforts of this already strained food banks. All right, RTO for everyone but top performers. More companies are requiring that workers return to the office, except if they are star employees. Staffers with unique skills and talents of those who have a, quote, proven record of exceeding performance quotas are often exempt from RTO mandates, according to the Wall Street Journal. Warnings it can breed resentment and accusations of favoritism. That's true. Remote and hybrid roles remain in hot demand as job seekers, even as their availability is dwindling, as more companies are pulling that opportunity away. Is Netflix morphing into cable? And this is a big deal right now because of the way in which people are getting their information. As Netflix keeps adding subscribers and diversifies into live events and sports, according to The Verge, that's looking more and more like cable. And we're going to be squeezed harder to pay for the content. The streaming giant is once again raising prices. And for the first time, it's across the board in all their platforms. Its premium monthly subscription is going up from $22.99 to $24.99. And its ad-supported plan is seeing its first bump to $7.99 a month. Meanwhile, Starbucks wants customers to linger. Check this one out. It's a new day at Starbucks. As of yesterday, the coffee chain is aiming to bring back the cafe experience, encouraging customers to linger if they're paying. is among the changes introduced by the new CEO, Brian Niccol, to reverse the fall in its company's annual sales since 2020. Other changes, like making restrooms and free water cups available only to those paying, have proven more divisive for workers and the public. You think? Whole Foods CEO is taking on a role at Amazon. Whole Foods Market CEO Jason Bushell will take over parent company Amazon's grocery business. The company announced yesterday Bushell, who was named Whole Foods chief in 2020, will continue to lead the chain while also serving as vice president of Amazon's worldwide grocery stores unit. Since acquiring Whole Foods in 2017, Amazon has made efforts to incorporate the brand into its broader grocery strategy, offering discounts for Prime members and testing an integrated store concept. And last but not least, today, millennial wealth has quadrupled despite the toll of the Great Recession and the much debated penchant for avocado toast. Millennials are doing pretty well financially. In fact, those born between 1982 and 1996 now have more wealth compared to previous generations at the same age, in part because the wealth quadrupled from 2019 to 2022. Yet despite being on solid financial ground, most millennials don't, quote, feel rich. Much of the generation's wealth is on paper in the form of appreciating homes and retirement accounts. But one thing for sure, those numbers are up greater during the last 4 years, i.e. during the Biden and Harris administration, than they were under the Trump administration. Those are the facts. That's the data. Meanwhile, like it said in this, in the one piece about food insecurity, 5 years, guys, prices in groceries, not 4, not just during the Biden administration. All right, let's take a quick break, Dev. 773-763-9278. Love to hear from you. Love to find out how you guys are surviving this first week of Trump. We'll be right back.
Good morning. You're waking up with Richard Chew.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
We're live and ready to hear from you. Text or call us now at 773-763-9278. Same number. Simple as that.
Let's get the conversation going
on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, guys, welcome back to Chew's Views, 773-763-9278. Okay, so I asked the question, how are you guys surviving this first week of Trump and Trumpism? And, I've said to you, be mindful that there's a lot of what's happening. Well, let me make sure I don't demean the impact. But a lot of what's happening, based on the fury of things that are happening, the fire hose, if you will, is the shock, the impact of shock and awe. Let's throw everything at them that we can. Let's do everything we can to try to break their spirit. My spirit will not be broken. Don't get me wrong. And yours won't be either. I mean, let me just tell you that as a bit of encouragement. I see the things that pop up and I go, holy you know what, Batman. And there's some spicy words in there, but I won't obviously say them on the air. But I look at that and I go, okay, Robin, yeah, this is pretty jacked up. That's me being Batman and Robin in the same scene talking to myself. Trying to make Devin laugh. My man's been working hard, so I gotta make sure I keep a smile on his face because he does so much to keep us on the rails. You should have seen him yesterday. Listen, I am just like the rest of us. I see it all. I'm aware of it. I get all the notifications of feeds. I read everything I can, and it stinks to high heaven. I do want to know, though, how you guys are surviving and have been surviving this first week. The shock and awe is by design to get us off our mark, to get us to not stand on our business. That's what it's there for. It's not to be effective in any way. Because tell me, someone on the right that may be listening to our show or that follows our show, someone call in, have the guts to call in or text or email me and tell me how any policy, any executive order, I should say, this last week has impacted the country in a positive way. The entire country, not just the people who voted for this garbage. Let me know what it is. Have the guts to be able to do that. Because I saw something that really gave me a new insight. And I've got 3 or 4 things I want to talk about in this next segment. But I want to talk about something that not a lot of people are leaning into, but I'm going to lean into it in terms of why MAGA stays with Donnie. Let me share this with you guys. Because I asked the question, how is what's happened, any of these executive orders, affected all of the country in a positive way? So President Biden's executive orders affected the country in a positive, no one negatively, unless they were doing something that was negative to the country. But the executive orders that President Biden signed were about helping everybody. But and if you want to say, well, it didn't help everybody, here's what it didn't do. It didn't directly hurt anyone. You want to fire people that work for the federal government that were doing their job and investigating bad behavior. You want to fire them because they were doing their job to come after you, Donald Trump, because you broke the law. So that's not helping anybody. It's hurting people. Pretty much every one of the executive orders that he signed was designed to hurt folks. And then to take his happy ass out to California and basically try to tell Gavin Newsom, if you don't do it this way, then we're not going to give you federal help. Who is that hurting? Everybody that was directly impacted by the weather. Who is it helping? No one. Not one person. I'm going to come back to Trump in California in a moment. But this is something that was very profound, simply profound. Okay, in terms of helping versus hurting. Bless you, Devin. And this is something I want you guys to be mindful of, and I'll send it to you. I won't take credit for it, but it's something that Don Winslow put out that I thought was very appropriate for why people ask the question, man, I just can't understand why a white woman a white woman in the suburbs of any community, the vaunted suburban white female voter, would vote for this garbage. Well, I have, as we talked about on the family meeting, I know part of it's the proximity to the patriarchy. And, you know, Adrian talked about it in terms of, as we refer to him as drunk ass Adrian, referred to it, a reference that as, if their white husband gets to keep his job and gets to stay in control, that gives them direct proximity to the patriarchy. That's a fact, guys. That's not anecdotal. The data supports it when we get into this conversation around DEI in a moment. I'll bring that to you. But I asked this question, why would that person, and I know the answer why, but I like to get something from somebody else that puts out an answer to a question. Why would a person of any community, so I could list them all, and today I could talk about one group or I could talk about another. Whatever that group is, African-American men that voted for Trump, Hispanic men that voted for Trump, Asian men, Muslim men, the folks that are in the undecided, committed areas of the Muslim community with regard to the Middle East. And the list goes on. So no one just get upset and go, oh, Richard's playing the race card again. No, I'm playing the Rainbow Coalition card today, as I often do. I'm fair in my that's a dumb move commentary. I just am. I know that I am. Check the record. But Don Winslow put something out that kind of gave me another peek into the reason that so many people stick with Trump. Profound and simple. So I will read it to you, and I will get it to you if you'd like. Here's the truth. Trump supporters don't measure his success by what he does for them. They measure by what he does against people who they don't like. That's why they see him as being, quote, successful. This is why they will never abandon him. His tormenting of, quote, others sustains them. I'll read it again. Here's the truth. Donald Trump's supporters don't measure his success by what he does for them. They measure by what he does against people they don't like. That's why they see him as being successful, quote. This is why they will never abandon him. His tormenting of others sustains them. I've used the phrase, I put it in slightly different language. They don't have the guts to deal with somebody that they don't like or don't understand or that's different from them, Devin. So they will proxy it to someone like Donald Trump, who doesn't have the guts to deal with the person he doesn't like. He does it through his minions, frankly, and he's gotten enough people angry at the others so that he could then get reelected to do the damage that they want. That they don't have the guts to do. They don't have the guts to stand up and talk to somebody or find out about a different person, a person who has a different personality or comes from a different community or speaks in a language in addition to the English language. I don't like to say speaks another language. I like to say speaks in a language in addition to the English language, because somebody that speaks French or Spanish or whatever, or Farsi, what do they say that they're speaking another language? No, they speak a language different than my native tongue. In any event, that's a whole nother conversation. That's what, and I've said versions of this for a long time. They need to have the bully. They need to be behind someone that's going to do the dirty work. And that's why so many people fall in line, because they want someone to go after and torment others. It sustains them. They're punks and punkettes in their own life. So rather than them taking a stand, rather than them dealing with their own incapacities and their own mediocrity, they turn it over. They proxy to a dude who's no better than they are, who's equally mediocre. Even his late mother said it. And that's not an anecdotal. Did she actually say it? No, she was quoted as saying it, that he's an idiot and has very weak social skills. His own mother said that. So those who are still following him, that don't measure his success by what he will do for them, and that's why I wanted to layer these two together. What has he done in these executive orders that is for anyone's betterment, like he ran on, other than keeping his promise on destroying things? He hasn't fixed the price of eggs or gas or rent or mortgages or interest rates or any of those things. And to be honest with you, he hasn't fixed the southern border. All he's done is a bunch of pomp and circumstance and use our tax dollars to go down and be wasteful at the southern border. And in terms of this immigration, rounding up people and deporting people, there's a way to do that doesn't cause harm. And I'm waiting to see how many of the Polish, Ukrainian, Central European nation neighborhoods is he going into anywhere in the country to deport people who are illegally here in those communities. And we don't see it happening. But again, I come back to and I have to give credit to Don Winslow for posting this, and I thought it was right on point. It's purely about tormenting the others, and it sustains those who continue to follow him. Because you have to give me something substantive in terms of what he's actually done that's helping people. These executive orders are not about helping anybody other than the people that are in his close, cadre of fools, so that they can laugh at people. I mean, his second son puts a threat out to folks, and the country's okay with that. Imagine if just to use an example, imagine if President Biden, if one of his children had put a threat out like Eric Trump did, the right would have lost their ever-loving minds. And the reason that this point about what Don Winslow says is so on point is because right here in Chicago, they came in to threaten and hurt people, because there's a bunch of weak A people in Chicago that would rather see people be tormented because it sustains you than to actually see things change for people who need the change and need the effect and the positive effect of our government, both federal and local. But we're going to keep talking about this, guys. We're going to take a quick break. When I come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the recent changes that the Knucklehead is signed off on. The number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we will be right back.
It's Choose Views with Richard Chu on WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Hey, guys, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. So, it's about having somebody else do your dirty work. And it's about people that need to be close to the patriarchy. And it's about letting somebody else fight your battles for you because you may not have the capacity. No, you have the capacity. You just don't have the will to fight them yourselves. So you turn it over to this henchman that wants to take away your stuff. And what do I mean by the taking away of your stuff? I'll just give it to you this way. And I do want to know what you guys have been doing to survive this first week. I genuinely do. I'm not going to poke any fun or anything of that nature. I promise you that. I genuinely want to know. So we can talk about it and then share that with other folks that may benefit from some of the things that you've been doing. All right. So we just saw another executive order that came down in terms of SNAP and in this conversation around DEI. So let me share something with you guys about this. Part of what's happening with these executive orders is to pit one side against the other side. I'm going to say pit us against each other. Because in this conversation, us means those of us that are progressive liberal Democrats. So let me be clear so I don't offend anybody. I don't mean to do that. Part of this is to create this additional animosity between the right and the left. That's how you divide a nation. That's how you tear it up from the inside. Like Nikita Khrushchev said, that was the way to take down the United States, the U.S. empire, was to have them to fight against each other. I'm paraphrasing. We won't have to fire one shot. They'll do it from inside. And that's what a lot of this is designed to do. And then what happens is, as you guys may have seen or heard this, I don't know if it's you've heard this thought, this bit of example from I think it was Mark Twain. And again, I don't like to if I'm going to misquote something or not quote something 100% accurate, I want to give a little bit of favor to myself in saying I'm paraphrasing this, but Mark Twain said a version of this years ago, and that was if you put red ants into a container and you put black ants into a container, they will get along. They will be fine. They won't necessarily be at each other's. They won't be in conflict with one another. However, if you shake up the container, then the red ants and the black ants will go at each other. They will destroy each other. And rather than being upset what they've then done is they've gotten upset with each other without recognizing that they should be upset collectively at who shook the container. Do y'all follow me? I kind of botched that, but I'll say it again. Red ants, black ants in a container, living fine, doing their thing, and then something shakes up that container. And rather than staying together and working together and not fighting against each other, they should place that energy toward who shook up the container rather than fighting against each other. I hope you guys get that, and I apologize for stumbling over it. Yeah, that's where we are. Okay? An external force has shaken up the container that we've all been living in together. Not perfectly, without a doubt, in order to form a more perfect union. However, we as progressive liberal Democrats have to hold on to something. And that is, we have to hold on that we can fight together against this evil empire and the destruction that the right wants to see happen. So please, y'all, let's not fight against each other. whether it be members of Congress, whether it be state officials, whether it be local officials, and those of us who support those entities. We have to fight together. We were already divided from the right to some extent. At the same time, we have to make sure that we don't get divided inside of the left. Unless you're John Fetterman, John Fetterman needs to be primaried. Plain and simple. Primary his behind now. Okay? He needs to go. Let's not wait around. Let's start calling him out now. Let's not wait. He is, well, come back to the point. Let's not fight internally. Let's fight together. Let's not need to be the most right or accurate one with the message, but know that our broader message is to move our ideas and agenda forward and back to the top of the table. How do we fight? The first thing we don't do is fight against each other. And so when it comes to goods and services and programs, one of the things that has happened is we've lost sight of the fact that there are people who need these support systems. And SNAP is one of those programs that, you know, they're pressing pause on. And so this is where the point that Don Winslow makes ties into my thinking about causing harm suits the right and suits the MAGA crowd more than doing good. And here's an example. One of the largest recipient groups of SNAP benefits, children, elderly people, people with disabilities, working families, people with low-paying jobs, people with fixed incomes. Now, children don't vote in elections. Elderly people do, to the best of their ability. People with disabilities do. Working families do. The heads of the working families, I should say. People with low-paying jobs, maybe not as much as we'd like them to. We need to give them greater incentives to vote. And people with fixed incomes, most definitely. What's my point in all of this? A large swath of those people look like me, but a larger swath don't look like me. And that is the group, percentage-wise, that voted in greater mass for this carnage. Those are those people that want to see this thing that sustains them, which is harm to others. But in fact, this is the epitome of F around and find out. This is the epitome of you shot your own self in the foot, because if you voted for this carnage and you didn't pay attention to what we were trying to tell you, it's now become this self-inflicted wound. Your hate for others, your need to have your bully go out and do the things to hurt others, that as Don Winslow points out, to sustain you in whatever capacity that it might, actually is truly, literally affecting your own livelihood. And you cannot allow yourself to stay with that kind of thinking. You cannot allow that to be the case, because it truly is you hurting yourself. Trump supporters don't measure his success by what he does for them. And so let's just pause it right there. What he does for them. Well, what he just did for them, for you that are MAGA, is you kind of cut your own wrist. This is a literal program that's going to impact you in a great way. It's not going to just hurt those that are the others or torment those that are the others. It's literally based on the states, how our states are laid out red and blue, and where the larger numbers of lack of education, rural poverty, and metropolitan poverty, and suburban poverty. I go back to what Managing Director of Blessings in a Backpack said, Dan Summons, last week. There's not a zip code in America that doesn't have an issue with food insecurity. So that includes the red states that voted for Donald Trump, that wanted to have his tormenting of others sustain them. You guys follow me? So I just wanted to lay that out. SNAP and DEI being erased from our federal support systems and from our private company support systems, public and private. Those programs, based on the numbers, the data, not me, help a certain group of people. And many of those are the people that are in the red states, the reddest of red counties and communities that are going to now suffer from that because their perception was it's going to hurt and torment others. And that's going to sustain me. Lyndon Johnson had it right. If I can get a white person to think that he's better than a Negro, I can strip his pockets of all of his goods. And that's what's happening right now. And it's sad in a major way that people have that much hate in their system that they couldn't see that. So what am I doing to sustain myself during this period of time? Well, I'm thankful and blessed that I have the ability to be here on the air and have the show and talk to you guys and hopefully bring you reality with some positivity rolled into it. You know, I know that there's times when I just got to bring the heat about things that are going on so that we stay aware. Remember, I talk about this all the time. If you aren't aware, if you don't acknowledge, you can't do anything. We have to acknowledge these truths, guys. At the same time, the plan for going forward has to also be what has to be roped into that reality. And that acknowledgement is knowing that we will not only sustain ourselves through this, but we will also put down markers so that we can go forward. And it starts with us working in the local communities. It starts with us taking back that space that we, in some cases, have ceded. It starts with making sure that we're taking care of those around us. And that's one of the things that I am definitely doing. I'm most certainly making sure that the people that are close to me are sustained. And also laughing at these fools. Most definitely. I'm laughing at them. Laughing at them is good. Laughing at them is good. So listen, guys, we're going to take a quick break. Come back, grab some of your calls. The number is 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
It's Choose Views with Richard Chew on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, guys. Welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. A couple of good comments, text messages. One that says, you got the analogy slightly incorrect. Assuming we're the ants, Trump and the people who own him have convinced some of us to shake up our own container. I would agree with that. Most definitely, there are people in the container that were convinced that this is that Lyndon Johnson kind of analogy. So thank you for sending that. Good point. You can't plan to move forward if you don't know or won't admit where you are. Doggone truth. That's why I say so oftentimes, know where you stop, acknowledge where you are, acknowledge what's going on, and then do your best to proceed. Come up with the plan that allows you to proceed. All right, Devin, let's grab a few quick calls. Let's go to Big Art here in Chicago. Big Art, good morning, and welcome to Choose Views.
Hey, Rich. Good morning to you too, man.
Hey, you're a little muffled, Big Art. Just to let you know.
Oh, okay. Speak louder.
Speak louder or get closer or something, but it's a little muffled.
It's a little muffled. Can you hear me now?
Yep, that's better.
Okay. An edible, a shot in a beer a day keeps the Trump, MAGA anxiety, and depression away.
Okay.
I'm just joking. You know, I'm just joking. I'm not doing all that.
I'm with you, man.
What helps is like when listening to your show and other progressive shows like it, and knowing the truth of what's going on and what has happened. Last Friday, I think it was the first hour of the Tom Hartman show, and he had Greg Palast on, who threw out all this data about how they ramped up the voter suppression in swing states and Republicans in red states all across the country, they just ramped it up to where so many people, I mean, you have your voter apathy, no doubt about that. We all know about that. You have, what are four did you always say? Racism, sexism. What are the other two? Racism, sexism. Nepotism.
Nationalism.
And the other one, that's a male thing.
Why am I trying?
It'll come to us anyway.
Misogyny.
Misogyny. There you go. They ramped up all of the voter suppression stuff to the point where so many numbers didn't even get a chance to vote. Provisional ballots, all of that. But you hear no one on the Democratic side who knows these things. And I know just about everyone who's in the know what Greg Palast is and what his purpose has been over the last decade and the history that he's uncovered about voter suppression, throughout the country.
Yeah, we had him on yesterday. He talked about that at in our 7:30 hour, and we're going to have him back again to talk more about suppression and tools that have been used by the right. And to your point, Big Art, where the left hasn't really spent and leaned into the suppression, the impacts rather of suppression over time, because then people, as I said to him, and or I asked him, how does that impact people psychologically when this takes place? Do they then self-suppress? Do they then stay out of the mix because they give up? They give up. Yeah. So. Excellent point. But I'm glad to know that you're taking that shot, getting that gummy. So good.
Yeah. Could you give me a little information? I missed that the threat that was it the cocaine head or was it Eric that made a threat on the American people? What was that about?
Wait. Say that again. What did I miss?
He said
Eric Trump. Oh, yes.
Was it Eric?
It was Eric Trump that put a threat out. He put out a post, and it was essentially a threat saying, you all need to toe the line. And he doesn't even understand how that's actually written. He wrote toe as in TOW rather than toe the line, meaning toes to the line. He doesn't even, that's his ignorance. But anyhow, he said, if y'all don't toe the line, we're coming after you. We're going to make it even worse. And realizing that that's a threat, that they took it down, but hey, too bad, it was already out there. Yeah, Eric Trump did that day before yesterday. How There you go.
It's amazing how we can have a functionally illiterate president goes to Los Angeles and it spouts off. Mayor Bass has to correct him.
Yeah.
Listen, Mr. Trump. We've got a lot of hazardous waste that came from all these fires.
But you want people out there cleaning up their own stuff.
Oh, they should start. They can start rebuilding right away. That's not how it works.
No, that's why that's why his properties.
So ignorant of everything.
That's why his properties are so awful. Anyhow, Big R, I got you, man. I appreciate, and I'm glad to hear that you're doing well. Happy 2025.
I'm hanging in there pretty good. Man. It's still a little bit disappointed. We've only gone through the first week, and I can imagine what the first month and the first year are going to be like. All we can do is brace ourselves, stay positive, and see.
That's right. That's right.
That's all we can do, man. That's pretty much it.
That's right. Thanks.
Don't give up. Don't give up.
No. All right, Big R. Thanks for the call.
Your children, your grandchildren are dependent on you. They really are.
Yeah.
So don't give up.
Absolutely.
All right, man.
All right, man.
Good day.
Good to hear your voice. Be well. Thanks, Val.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's see if we can grab Karen real quickly before we hit the top of the hour. Hey, Karen, good morning. Welcome to the show. Hey. How are you?
Good morning. I'm hanging in there. I'm angry. And, not going to lie, freaked out, acknowledging where I am right now. But the tweet that you refer to says, any and all who dare to defy the American golden age, heed this warning. You will lose. Toe the line or we will run you down. The gloves are off and we're not playing around this time. For now, it's tariffs, but trust me, we can and will do much worse. So much worse. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the the threat. Thank you for reading that clearly, Karen, and I appreciate you helping with that. That's the threat that he put out to the United States of America's citizens. How about that, people on the right?
Right.
Because some of them aren't going to, quote, toe the line when they start to see that their SNAP programs get yanked away from them.
Right.
So,
right.
I appreciate you reading that. What were you going to say else? I'm sorry.
I'm a believer in the Serenity Prayer, doing what we can do, like recognizing the things that we can change and, kind of knowing the difference. And right now, I believe that the only thing that we can do is speak clearly. When we speak about DEI, name it: diversity, equity, and inclusion. Don't let them, because what they want is they love to parse it down to three little letters, okay? CRT, DEI. No, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And, make people really sit with those words, and that they want the exact opposite. They want whites only, they want inequality, and they want exclusion. So look in the mirror and then make a decision about whether you're okay with the fact that they are stripping this from our government, from every government agency. They are taking away funding. They're halting funding to marginalized communities. And our corporations are towing the line. I particularly am offended and feel betrayed by Target at the moment. I have never expected very much from Walmart, but Target, I expected so much more. So I am calling daily to the Target executive office, and I am going to keep doing that until they reverse that decision. I'm going to try and organize a larger protest. But this is what we need to do, and we need to excite the Target team members as well to take action on their own behalf.
Well, here's the thing with the surprising with Target. I'll be honest with you, I'm not surprised by anything that any of these corporations do. Because I look at, in large measure, who runs those corporations. But the reason that Target kind of was like, really Target, is because Target's in a community. Its corporate headquarters are in a community that is not, that it supports this.
Somalian. They have a huge Somalian community in Minnesota. Yeah. In Minneapolis, St. Paul. Yep.
So that's part of the, really Target. And the other part, before I let you go, is this, and I'm glad you made this point about understanding on where you are, and then understanding what you can do in the moment, in the space, literally where you are. That's really important. And I got a text from someone that says you can't move forward if you don't know or won't admit where you are. And that's why it's important, like you said, for people to stay plugged in, as challenging as it is, to stay plugged in. Because division and distraction is what this is all about. Divide and distract so that people don't see all the other things that we're doing that are not publicly known and not made publicly aware. So great point on your part about staying plugged in and finding something to do that's going to have impact in the immediate space that you're in. And that's so well put, Karen.
Right, and also too, I would be remiss to mention the failure of the media, and so in the absence of the media, we need to be also calling our Democratic leadership, thanking the Democratic leadership that are speaking plainly, and demanding of the rest of the group, and we're not going along. You obstruct every single thing that they want. And I'm glad that Hakeem Jeffries is speaking about raising the debt ceiling to protecting Social Security and Medicare and the things that we care about. And that absolutely, they have got to get out in front of cameras every single day and hammer that home.
Got to do it. I've been saying that for weeks now. Every day, press conference, every day. Let it be known every single day. And that's going
They
to...
dropped
I think that's, Karen,
Yeah,
going to
go ahead.
help. No. I believe that's going to help that 90 million, whatever the real number is. We can go as low as 69 million people that did not vote. If they see that the Democratic leadership across the board, from Mayor Johnson to Mayor Bass to, any other elected official on the state level or governor or federal, every day out talking about what we're going to do and how we're going to stand in the void, it will impact the people that, not the people who we want to try to change their minds, but the people who didn't get involved. So we got to go to a break. And then
Because, I know you do. And I'm just going to say this. For 1 year, you and I talked about Project 2025. The media didn't pick it up until, maybe 4 or 5 months before the election. And not enough of them were talking about it. They are absolutely implementing, as you and I talked about, hit the ground running, implementing Project 2025 and Schedule F right now as we speak.
That's right.
So that's their failure.
All right, good to hear your voice.
Ooh.
There you go.
All
Get
right.
it
Have
out.
a good
Get it
one.
out. All right, Karen, we'll talk to you soon. All right, bye now.
Talk to you soon. Hon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys, we've got guests in our second hour, and I want to make sure that we get to your calls. So stay with us. We'll weave them in. Don't worry. We will get to you. We see you out there on hold. The number is 773-763-9278. Choose Views will be right back.
Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew.
Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that will focus on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Hey, guys. Welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. I know we've got some folks on hold. We will get to you between our guests. And we've got folks that have sent some great texts this morning. So thank you so much for that. Make sure that you are tuning in to Joan Esposito. We'll be taking calls today. Live, local, and progressive, weekdays 2 to 5 p.m., Joan Esposito. And, of course, Patty Vasquez, 5 to 7, will be joined by her guest, Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez, weekdays 5 to 7 here on WCPT. Check them out. Tomorrow here on Choose V's, I'll be talking with our contributor, Kurt Mullett, from also known as Hoosier Blue 63. There's a lot of vitriol out there. There's a lot of angry folks out there spewing garbage. And Kurt and I are going to talk a little bit tomorrow about some of the things that he's directly, as a white dude in central Indiana, had to deal with. And I'll talk a little bit about that tomorrow, as well as with DEI expert Dante King, assistant professor at the Mayo Clinic College of Medicine and Science. So we'll have both of those wonderful folks with us tomorrow. And today we have the opportunity to talk with people that use their brain. You guys know I always say this. I love we have smart people that are on our show, that are you guys as callers and contributors to the show. But certainly when we have guests on that do certain things that are beneficial to us, trying to have a little smarter society. This morning we have with us Josh Neufeld, who is what we'll call an alternative cartoonist. And along with Josh, we've got Carmen Noble, who is program director and editor-in-chief of the Journalist Resource. Welcome, guys, to Choose Views.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us. I'll try not to talk over the two of you guys and give you guys the ability to talk about the work that you do. In my mind, both of you are artists. You are using your journalistic skill and your creative skill to better inform us and to better keep people aware of, as I like to call it, that creative side that done properly becomes a tool for informing others. And I'll start off with you, Carmen. Tell us a little bit about the work that you do, informing the news, as it were, at the Journalist Resource.
Sure. Thanks, Richard. So the Journalist Resource is a longstanding project of the Harvard Kennedy School of Government at the Shorenstein Center on Media Politics and Public Policy. And our broad goal is to bridge the gap between journalism and academia with the idea that peer-reviewed research can be, and the researchers who conduct it can be very helpful to help journalists thwart misinformation, because there's a lot of misinformation going on out there, but also to shed light on effective solutions to societal problems. And we do that with research roundups, knowing that journalists don't have the time to read through academic journals. Our team does that for them. But we also have explainers on newsy topics just to help journalists kind of ground themselves before they go about covering them. And occasionally, and these are topics like healthcare and education, economics, criminal justice. And occasionally when funding permits and when we feel like words alone will not suffice, we enlist the talents of Josh Neufeld, who's a comics journalist. And I became a fan of his years ago in reading the work, realizing that comics can be a great tool for people who are suffering news fatigue, kind of to bring the news to them gently, but in a really, like you said, a really creative way to engage audiences where text might not suffice.
So, Josh, that's the baton handing off from me, from me to Carmen. I come out of the blocks, I give it to Carmen. She got it to you. Take the baton, Josh, and tell us a little bit about your work and why what Carmen said about appealing, maybe in a slightly different way, has been, your forte.
Yeah, thank you, both of you. I really feel that comics do have an ability to connect with readers in a really empathic and intimate way. Like I think Carmen's calling it a news fatigue, is a really good way of talking about how I think comics can bring stories that maybe seem overly familiar, or that we've, lost our ability to connect with the people that are at the center of those stories. They can really bring that back, because there's this inherent thing that happens when you read a comics piece where you connect with the protagonist or the character in that story, and you form this really intimate connection. You almost feel like you become that person as you're traveling through the story. And so I use nonfiction comics, stories about real people, to bring those stories back to life. And I did that first back in the day with a book called New Orleans After the Deluge, which was about 7 people who lived through Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans and told their stories. And right up into the present to the most recent piece, which is, I think, the reason why we have the privilege of being on your show today, which was Closing the Gap.
Yeah. So I have to ask you guys both a nerdy question, but it's a question of respect. Carmen, what took you down the path of journalism? And Josh, and we'll let Carmen answer first, what took you down the path of journalism through comics?
Yeah, so I guess way back. I think, but I was always, as you said, a nerdy kid who loved to read, loved facts, and I was very shy.
Okay.
But I found that even like in high school with the high school newspaper, if I had a notebook in front of me, suddenly I was emboldened. And I just kind of went with that. And yeah, and I think just, as you said, I was listening to your tagline, facts matter, and that's kind of guided me throughout my life.
Yeah.
And I think journalism is just really important to, and I'll give a shout out to journalism in general, and local news especially, to hold powerful people to account. And if nobody's reporting what's going on, then everybody can get away with what they want.
Yeah. Josh, how about you, man?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, amen to that about journalism, because that's always been a part of my life since I was very young, and my mom had, NPR and other news stations on constantly. So I just grew up in that environment and feeling that the role of journalism was so important. And getting to combine my two loves of comics, which I grew up as a lot of young kids in America did, reading superhero comics and so forth. And at a certain point, I stopped being interested in those kinds of comics and discovered that there was this whole other field out there of nonfiction. real stories of real people, but told in comics form. And it kind of took me a little while to kind of get my head around that. Like, wait, these comic book characters are real people, and the balloons and the words they're saying are actual quotes of theirs. But once I really connected with that and realized like that power of comics that's so just vital and instinctual could be used to tell nonfiction stories, I was hooked, and I started doing nonfiction comics like autobiographical stories, both about my own life, and I was an illustrator for Harvey Pekar on American Splendor, if some of your listeners may have heard of him. But I eventually moved into the field of journalism, so kind of marrying, this passion that I had for speaking truth to power and telling hard truths and holding, the authorities to account, et cetera, and combining that with my creative impulses and ambitions as a cartoonist. And that's where I am now.
Well, the history, what got you guys, you both have said something that, is indirectly and directly complementary to one of our taglines, and that's facts matter. But one of the things that you guys have been so amazing at and doing is using that skill set, but also understanding that people need to be able to have a tool to kind of, cut their way through the garbage to get to what is really factual and what's really real. And both of you guys do it in slightly different ways or slightly different instruments, but ultimately it's getting down to giving people real, cold, hard, here's what it is, facts. And I think that leads me to a question that I wrote down that I wanted to make sure to ask both of you. What has happened? And I know this is a big question. But what has happened, Carmen, you probably already know where I'm going with this, Josh as well. What has happened with journalism in the recent past? I mean, I'm 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. What's happened in how, you guys know where I'm going. It's an easy question to ask, but I don't know if there's an easy answer to in journalism.
I guess I'll start. Yeah.
Yeah. See. All right. Well. All right. The rules are Carmen goes first. Josh. All right. Carmen, you got the baton again.
Okay. I mean, so many things. Yeah, and it's a question I think all the journalists are asking themselves every day. Help. What's happening? I think one, there's a lack of funding, and journalists, new and old, are competing with information overload and misinformation overload from social media and other sources. And so we're just trying to compete to get the facts out there amid an onslaught of misinformation. And I think there's a lot of distrust in journalism. Occasionally for good reasons, but often for bad reasons. And I think that's part of what our project is trying to do to help make sure that journalists are armed with peer-reviewed academic research so that they have the facts there, so that they're throwing facts into the mix. But I will say I think there's a lot of kind of dismay about journalism among journalists and among other people who are just kind of throwing the media out there as an enemy, which isn't fair. But I will say there's a lot of amazing investigative journalism going on right now. So I'm hopeful, but worried. And I guess I'll leave it at that. Josh, what do you think?
I mean, 100% agree, but I think weirdly, like, to turn it around a little bit, I think that because there's such a diffusion of information out there now and people get their news in such new ways, it's not just the morning newspaper and the radio dial and the TV news at 6. I think it's actually opened up like new opportunities for to be a little selfish here, for cartoonists like myself. Not that, I'm not alone. There's a lot of other people doing comics journalism out there. And I think that there's more appetite or willingness to accept that this type of nonfiction storytelling is actually journalism. And I love partnering with Carmen because she's a real editor in all the best ways. Like when we work on a story together, first of all, she's the one who finds me the pieces that, can really have the biggest impact. And then when I report these stories and put the scripts together, she's fact-checking it all along the way and making sure that these are actual quotes and that these people said these things at this time, and all of that stuff that's so important for that trust to develop between the reader and the outlet that's producing the news. So I feel like we can stand tall in saying that any of the work that we've done together at the Journalist Resource is quote unquote real journalism, even if it's in a form that may be surprising or even shocking to some people.
So talk about how you guys, you most recently, you guys put together this great piece, 4 Ways the Journalist Resource Informed Journalism in 2024. Talk a little bit about that as a collaborative work that you guys were a part of.
Let's see. I'm sorry. I think so. Josh and I only work together on the comics journalism. So I guess we'll talk about how that informed journalism, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So I think, and again, our project is focused just on academic research. So if I can back up a little bit, in 2022, I saw a really interesting article in the American Journal of Public Health, which told the story of an effort to increase COVID vaccination rates in Chicago's houseball community.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought this is a really interesting story, and I got in touch with Josh, who turned it into an amazing comic, which we published on the Journalist Resource website, journalistresource.org. And it caught the attention of an editor at the Chicago Sun-Times who said, I had no idea that this was going on. I didn't even know about Chicago's houseball community. And said he wouldn't have probably come across the article in this academic journal, but he saw the comics journalism piece.
Mm-hmm.
So was realizing this is a terrific way to get the message out there, asked permission to republish it in the Sun-Times, which we enthusiastically said yes to. And that led to the more recent comic that Josh was talking about, which talks about how a church hospital intervention on Chicago West Side is helping to reduce hypertension.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, but I guess, it's just, now I'm babbling a little bit, but the way we're informing the news is to take really complex topics and teach journalists how to both navigate academic research so that they're getting the right information out there to their audience, but also interesting ways to translate that research into an accessible way to receive it and share it with the people who need that information the most.
Who need it the most, yeah. Josh, your thoughts real quickly there.
Yeah, I think what is so great about the pieces that we've had a chance to do together, and that have all, now it's 3 stories in a row that have been republished or published simultaneously in the Sun-Times, is that we have these trusted researchers that we're working with who also are in the communities, serving them. They're PhDs, but they're also doctors, working with patients, or they're nurses on the front lines. And so I'm always looking in my stories to find those protagonists that you can really sink your teeth into and relate to, and they come alive, and you feel like you might meet them out on the street. And those are the kind of stories that I think we've been lucky enough to do that have all been, had gotten front page coverage in the Sun-Times and increased exposure. And that's what we're trying to do, get good news, good information, and inspiring stories out there.
So as we wrap up, guys, I want to ask a question about something, a phrase or a denotation, Carmen, that you use, and that's news fatigue. So with all the news fatigue that is out there, or information fatigue or overload, what is it that each of you guys think that regular everyday folks can do to get better information and be better at then distributing the better information that they do come across? Broad question, but what do you guys, what would be some of your recommendations. If you were standing in front of a room of 100 people and they said, Josh, Carmen, what can I do to get better information as a regular everyday person?
Yeah, and as you said, there's so many sources out there. And I think broadly, just make sure you trust the source of the information. So know where that information is coming from. And that's often, if you're hearing it from, and I think there's research showing that a lot of people get their news and got the information that they used to vote in the last election from family members or friends. So if you're getting information from them, ask them, where did you get that information? And if people are looking for which news sources to trust, I think an underutilized resource is the library.
Yes.
And librarians are amazing and are always eager to help and do not toot their own horns a lot. So I'm going to toot the horns of librarians and say, ask them what is a trusted news source, and they will walk you through that. And for news fatigue, I think it's important to take a break, but also know that there's a lot of good news out there too, and look for news for what people are doing to help the world, and not just the terrible things that are going on.
Cause chaos.
Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, again, I just echo everything that Carmen just said, and I guess that it's imperative that all of us sort of become educated news consumers. Like, it's worth kind of understanding what are trusted and verifiable news sources and what aren't. And my tendency is, if I see a headline that's designed to cause outrage or just sensationalize something that I already know is going on, that's like one check against it, not in favor of that source. It's like being a journalist. You want to verify your sources and get multiple. If you can find two news sources that both are telling the same story from two different angles and actually seem like they're reported and not just reporting what others might have said, then there's a one that you can start going with. But yeah, everything that Carmen said about also taking a break at times so that you just don't turn it all off and not come back and become one of those low information people.
Yeah, because
that doesn't help us.
At that point, you then become susceptible, I believe, to information that isn't necessarily the best or the most accurate. Yeah, I'm glad you guys.
Exactly.
I say that a lot, but I'm glad that you guys in your professions can say that to our audience, because I believe a lot of times I want people to even vet me and hear a third party, so to speak, recommendation or third party tool to say, yeah, we need to unplug, but then don't stay unplugged, get replugged in and come back with better, more information and share it with people who need it. As we wrap up, guys,
Absolutely.
First, I want to thank you both for being with us. A slightly different angle to the conversation that we have about facts mattering and all of our players being involved in this process. And thank you both for the work that you're doing and bringing a different spin on how we need to stay connected with the information that we share. Josh Neufeld and Carmen Noble with us this morning, guys. A journalist resource, taking kind of a different approach to keeping people informed and informing the news people that provide us with the news. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. I really appreciate your contribution this morning.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Richard. And I'd quickly say that if you want to see Josh's comics, you can see them on journalistresource.org.
Got that, guys?
Yeah.
Journalistresource.org. Make sure you guys get there, because guess what? These two, they like libraries and librarians.
Yes, sir.
All right, guys. Thank you for being with us this morning. We look forward to having you back sometime in the near future. Sound good?
Thanks. That would be great.
Sounds
Thanks,
great.
Richard.
All right, guys. Be well and have a great day.
You too. Bye.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye.
That was fun, because I'm a library nerd, and I appreciate both Carmen Noble and Josh Neufeld for being with us this morning to talk a little bit about the importance. I mean, bringing some humor through cartooning, or as Josh likes to put it, being an alternative cartoonist, and of course Carmen and the work that she does along with Josh through the Harvard Kennedy School and the Shorenstein Center on Media, Politics, and Public Policy. These guys, they take a different approach, but their goal is to make sure that people are better informed. And at the end of the day, that's where we have to be. As Carmen said, we got to get away from the misinformation and disinformation that is out there. We're going to take a quick break, guys. We've got another segment and that we'll be talking with a climate expert. Looking forward to having that conversation. 773-763-9278. This is Choose Views, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back to Choose Views with Richard Chew on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, guys, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. Thanks to Josh Neufeld and Carmen Noble for being with us this morning. I love their approach, and I love the fact that, as Carmen put it, libraries and librarians. I'm a library nerd. Devin and I were talking about the importance of libraries and the importance of what can happen and does happen at libraries. And he was just saying how the one in his community had been just renovated and upgraded and all that good stuff. And he walked in with the big wow. So yeah, follow these two guys, Josh Neufeld and Carmen Noble. We're keeping it moving, guys. And one of the things that there is a lot of disinformation about, to use the language that Carmen just brought to us, is what's happening with our climate. And happened and happening are the words that I would use, because we're in an ongoing struggle to protect our climate and not be in denial and not buy into the myths and disinformation about our climate. With us this morning is Emma Fisher, who is the Deputy Director and Chief Operating Officer at the Climate Cabinet. She's got, as I say, sleeves rolled up and elbows deep in the conversation around climate. Emma, good morning and welcome to Choose Views and WCPT.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Right before you, we had on Josh Neufeld, who's a comic journalist, and Carmen Noble, who's the editor at the Journalist Resource. And one of the things that Carmen referenced in terms of information is that the tremendous amount of disinformation and misinformation when it comes to the information that we all get. And if there's a space right now that there's a lot of disinformation and misinformation, it's around the conversation around climate. And now that we've introduced you, tell us a little bit about your work. Tell us a little bit about the Climate Cabinet and the work that you guys are putting out there, and the things that you're trying to do to better and more accurately inform the greater community.
Absolutely. Well, at Climate Cabinet, we are a national organization. We help state and local policymakers run, win, and legislate on climate change. And the reason we exist is because state and local governments actually play a huge role in tackling the climate crisis, building an equitable clean energy economy that can bring people's energy bills down and create jobs and invest in our communities across America. And also, these state and local policymakers are really important messengers that have their own constituencies and built-in audiences and play an important role in getting accurate information out there. So at Climate Cabinet, we exist in order to support those people who, have the support of their community, but are up against powerful special interests. And we want to be their backstop on climate to help them run, win, and legislate. So even now with Trump in the White House, we know there's a lot that these state and local governments can do. And all across the country, from Texas to California to right here in Illinois, we work to support those important local leaders.
So being a national organization, you obviously have your hands in a lot of different pies as it relates to helping different local groups. I've talked about this on my show so much the last few months, and more specifically even since the election, that the local organizations, whether it be food pantries, whether it be local politicians, or in your case, this thing that we all share that none of us can get away from, and that's our planet and our climate, locally have an opportunity to take a stand. And I didn't know, and this is something that I read about you and your organization, the percentages of the climate commitments under the Paris Agreement that are tied to state and local governments. Can you talk about that a little bit? Better inform us on that fact or that detail.
Yes, absolutely. I think, it's easy to get caught up in the national news hearing about all of the terrible things Trump is doing to our climate, but I really take a lot of hope from the fact that state and local governments can actually control 75% of the U.S.'s commitments under the Paris Climate Agreement and have the levers of power that we need to reduce emissions and build a more equitable clean energy economy through state and local government. So that's really what we focus on, and that gives me a lot of hope, and I think shows that all of us in our communities across the country do have some power and ways that we can get involved in our community to really move the needle forward.
So when it comes to the state and local governments and their impact, how much of the budgeting that state and local governments have on average, and I know that state by state it's going to be different, comes from the federal government as it relates to specific climate change, addressing certain climate change issues?
That's a really good question. And I would say that at Climate Cabinet, our view is that all policy is climate policy, whether it says that in the name or not. But really, environmental issues touch every aspect of our lives. And we actually just put out a new report that maps out the pathway forward on climate to continue our progress to reach America's climate goals, regardless of who's in the White House. And it really illustrates the policies that state government can adopt to keep building the clean energy economy, making energy bills more affordable for Americans with or without the White House, and continue moving forward. And the report specifically gets into how states can lead, and states like Illinois are already leaders and now have a responsibility to continue leading and accelerating that progress. And you asked about the budget, and I would just say that every piece of the budget matters. Transportation is the largest source of climate pollution in the U.S. and here in Illinois. So things like funding public transportation is a really critical climate decision. Of course, our electricity sector is critical for climate, and then from everything to industry to buildings. So all of that really does have a piece in the puzzle.
So here in Illinois, Emma, how are we doing? I mean, again, broad questions. I like to ask broad questions because it allows you to then add more content. I don't want to pin you down on one thing. How are we doing here in Illinois? Where there's some areas for opportunity, given that we've done some good things. Where there's some areas for opportunity?
I love that question because I, as a proud Illinois resident, I'm really proud of that we are leaders on climate. And a couple years ago, Illinois passed the Clean and Equitable Jobs Act, which committed us to achieving 100% clean renewable energy by mid-century. So our utilities have to get on track to reduce our pollution from the electricity sector. And that was a really huge landmark step forward and made Illinois a leader nationwide in the electricity sector. But there's still more to do. Obviously, we haven't achieved 100% clean energy yet. And there's also these huge sectors like transportation, which I mentioned is the largest source of pollution here in Illinois. It's about 1/3 of our greenhouse gas climate pollution emissions. So the next big step in Illinois is cleaning up the transportation system and reducing pollution from traffic. I don't know about you, but I feel like I and many people that I know spend too much time stuck in traffic, spend too much money on time stuck in traffic, and that's actually a climate problem as well. So the next step for Illinois is to really robustly fund more and better ways to get around, investing in high-quality public transportation, transit-friendly development, walkable, bikeable communities, things that will help us take cars off the road, reduce traffic, reduce pollution, and be cheaper, healthier, and safer for all of our communities. And then, of course, defending and accelerating electric vehicles, electric school buses as well. But right now we're really focused on what states can do, what Illinois can do to be a leader on transportation to help us tackle climate change right here at home.
I didn't realize, Emma, and thank you for saying this. I'm going to come back to a couple things that you mentioned. I didn't realize, and this is one of those common sense moments where an expert and a professional like you can help us all, that transportation is the biggest contributor. And you said it's 30. What percentage did you actually say it was? I didn't write it down.
So in nationwide, transportation is almost a third. It's 29% of our emissions. And here in Illinois, it's 26%, so about a quarter.
Okay. So we're below the national average in terms of the contribution. Obviously, population density of population is going to increase that. And just recently, you probably saw that New York City passed a new ordinance guideline in terms of congestion tax and commuting into Manhattan. And it's something that Chicago is certainly considering as well. And I'll be talking with Mayor Johnson in a couple of weeks about that. Do you think that we have a congestion problem because of cars, or do we how do I want to put this? Do we not have enough knowledge about the value of the transportation that we use? In other words, going to more hybrid vehicles, which will impact the environment, going to more electric vehicles, which some people say, well, what about the batteries? And this is a question that comes to me a lot when I lean into talking about EVs. So where's the nexus there of the blend between, combustion engine vehicles to electric vehicles and where we could try to land better?
Yeah, I think that it's a great question. What is the right answer on cleaning up the transportation system? And I think it's not a simple answer, and the all of these elements are going to be necessary pieces of the puzzle. So what we are really focused on at Climate Cabinet and working with our partners in Illinois right now, groups like Illinois Environmental Council, Sierra Club, Environmental Justice Partners in Chicago, and statewide, is working to establish targets to reduce emissions from the transportation sector and then create pathways to achieve that. And ultimately, it comes down to creating more options for people to get around in a way that is cheaper, safer, healthier, and more reliable for them. And that includes public transportation funding, safe, walkable, bikeable communities, as well as electric vehicles, and just ensuring that people do have those options because, we live in a diverse state and different communities have different needs, and it's all part of the transition.
How do we measure? And it's good to know that we in Illinois, I'm always proud. Like you, I could see the smile on your face when you said earlier that as a proud Illinoisan that we are leading, certainly one of the leaders in leading in the space and the conversation around a better climate for us all. Better climate means better in every capacity. And I didn't think about it. About all policy is climate policy. Wow, that's something I'm going to continue to lean into. But I want to come back and ask you this specific question. Emma, how do we measure? What are some of the things that we, as regular folks, all of us are regular folks, can use to say, yeah, it's getting better. Our climate's getting better. Our processes are getting better. What are some things you can give us or give the listeners to say, here's how we can measure and know that we are making a difference and that we are getting better?
That's a really great question. And I think it comes down to climate change is one of these problems that it's really easy to feel overwhelmed by, especially when we see people like Trump taking us backwards. That can be really overwhelming. We see the wildfires in Los Angeles and, here in Chicago, these really erratic weather patterns. And I think it's important to keep in mind that tackling climate change is not going to be linear. We will continue to see erratic weather and a changing climate, but that doesn't mean that we're not making progress. And I like to say, sometimes we talk about climate change in this all or nothing way where we either solve this problem or not. And that's not the reality of the situation. Every incremental thing we do to reduce emissions makes a difference. And it's a spectrum. So every bit matters. I think things to keep track of are looking at some of these systemic levers. For example, we can look at data from the EIA, the Energy Information Administration, to look at emissions from the transportation system, from the electric system. I know those are, probably not statistics that everyone is checking in on every day, but that's the best way to see our societal impacts over time. And everyday people can keep an eye on what their local policymakers are doing. For example, are we going to fund public transportation in Chicago and Illinois? Are we going to invest more in grid scale energy storage and making upgrades to our electric grid? So I think the way I think about that question is, what are the systemic policy actions that we are taking to solve this problem, knowing that it's not going to be linear, but every bit counts.
It's not going to be linear, and it's also not going to be, quote, immediate in terms of large-scale immediacy, but on a small scale, because that, you use a great word in terms of overwhelming. One of the things that I think happens with all of us is that we can become overwhelmed by the size of something that we're trying to resolve. And this is a good example. I think data is one of the tools to help folks become more aware that it's out there and to not be misinformed or disinformed. Someone sent me a text a moment ago that says, stop calling it misinformation and disinformation. Call it what it is, lies. Well, it's lies, and it's also the overwhelming feeling like we can't do anything about it. And then people become susceptible to the fear of, well, I can't do anything about this. And you're saying, no, you can do something about it. And if you were to give a listener 2 or 3 things that an individual could do to impact the environment, to impact our climate, what would they be?
I love that question. There are things all of us can do to help tackle the climate crisis and have healthier communities. The first one is stay hopeful. Like you said, climate change denial is one tactic, but we think about climate disinformation, climate despair, doom, delay. These are all tactics that the opposition uses to prevent us from taking action. So stay hopeful, get involved. I love the focus of your show around getting involved locally. Local government matters, and ultimately that ties back to Climate Cabinet's mission. We know that state and local governments can have a major impact on this issue, and we want to make sure policymakers understand how much they can achieve. And everyone out there has a role in that as well. You can get to know your local alderman, your state representative. These are regular people that are surprisingly accessible. And I would also recommend joining a local environmental organization or local political organization that can help you keep track of what's going on locally and find the highest, most effective ways of taking action. Here in Illinois, there are a lot of great groups to join, like the Sierra Club, Illinois Environmental Council. You can follow along with Climate Cabinet via our newsletter at climatecabinet.org, and we'll keep you updated as well. But I would just say get involved. For me, it gives me a lot of hope to be involved locally because we can really make an impact and see the traction that we're getting.
Yeah, I mean, Emma, the two things. First of all, thank you for that breakdown in terms of staying hopeful. I'm a big believer in that. I know people think that's kumbaya and all that, but we have to remain hopeful, and with that, then bring the sledgehammer to the conversation about getting stuff done. So it's the two sides of me. We remain hopeful. We remain connected. We understand the importance of local things that we can do. We get tied into organizations like Climate Cabinet and the Sierra Club. We had Ben Jealous on last Monday. Because he was giving the keynote at the King Breakfast with the Operation Push, and he talked about that in terms of being involved in local organizations. This database that you created, as we kind of wrap up, how can folks? Or let me ask the question this way: if folks can have access to that, how can they get access to the database of state and local climate action that you've put together? Is it something that the public can have access to? What do we do there?
Yeah, check out our website, climatecabinet.org. Because there are, like I said, state and local governments can impact 75% of our commitments under the Paris Climate Agreement. So these local governments are incredibly powerful when it comes to building the clean energy economy. But there are almost 500,000 state and local elected officials across the country, and that's just too many to keep track of for one person or for one organization without using data tools. So our team has built out data systems to track local governments across the country and identify where are the places that have the biggest climate policy opportunities coming up where we can get involved and, get some support behind local policymakers that are backed by their communities to help them be as effective as possible, whether on the campaign trail or in office. If you sign up at climatecabinet.org, we'll keep you posted on high climate impact elections where local leaders that are going up against powerful opposition need more support. We'll help you take action that way. And we also have other data resources like the Climate Cabinet Scorecard on our website where you can see how some of those folks are voting. So check it out. We have a lot of data that we share mostly in an applied ways, helping people take action because we really know that state and local government matters, and we want to help people get involved in a way where we can all make an impact.
So I will ask you, will you come back in the future, because climate is an ongoing, it's the thing that we share with each other, and it's a big part of the conversation, and being local is also a big part of that, and I'm leaning into that. So I hope that you'll be willing and interested to come back, Emma, to talk about things that you guys are continually doing and additional recommendations that we can make to our audiences across the country.
Well, I would absolutely love to come back. So thanks for the invite. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
And there really is so much we can do here in Illinois. So would love to continue talking about that.
So one more time, how can folks find you?
ClimateCabinet.org. Check it out. Sign up for our newsletter. You can also find us on all the various social media platforms. And yeah, everyone get involved, and thanks for having me on. Absolutely.
Emma Fisher, Chief Operating Officer, guys. That's a big deal. Deputy Director and Chief Operating Officer of the Climate Cabinet. Emma Fisher, thank you for being with us, and thank you for being on Choose Views this morning. We really appreciate you being on, but we even more appreciate the hard work that you're doing and the work of your organization. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a great day. Stay safe. We'll talk soon.
Bye.
Bye now. All right, guys, there it is. I mean, she put it down. Get involved. We share the climate. We no matter where we are on this big thing that we stay on, we share it. And we have an equal amount of responsibility to make sure that we're protecting it. I appreciate the text that I got earlier. Candidly, someone said to me, Richard, I wish you'd stop using the words misinformation and disinformation. Call it what it is, lies. And I'm with you on that. Thank you for sending me that text. Lies about for journalism not telling the full truth and shading us from it, and people having their head in the sand about what elected officials are doing. Lies about policy. The list goes on. Trump and his lies. And when it comes to climate, the misinformation, the disinformation, or, as this person sent me, the lies about our climate, the misdirection about our climate. But we've got great folks like Josh, who was on, and Carmen, who are trying to reshape the journalistic information and sources that are used, and have some fun with it. And they're library nerds, so thumbs up to them for that. But also, it was great to have Emma on with us as well to talk about the impact that you can have on our environment by getting involved and being involved in the local groups. I will try to put, I'm going to reach out to Emma and try to get, see if there's a link for the list that she talked about in terms of local, not only local groups, but also the database of what local officials are doing in the climate space conversation. And either have that as something to post on our website or minimally be able to email it out to you guys. So I'll make sure that I can get something from Emma that you guys can then pass along and share. The reason that what Emma had to say is so critically important is, listen, I always ask myself, okay, can I do a better job in terms of, disposing of things and how all that, it's a constant thing that runs through my mind. Did I turn the water off, turn the lights off in the other room? All those things that, you guys have heard me say before, and what can I do better? Don't sit with your car, sit idling with your car's engine. Those are things that are minimal things. Don't top off your gas. When the thing clicks, it's full. Don't top it off. That's a small thing that I learned from a woman who was a golf nerd friend of mine years ago. She said, don't top it off. It's bad for the environment. I looked at her like, really? She said, yeah. Explain to me why. That seepage is one of the things that gets into the environment, and you don't think about it. So little things like that help improve this thing that we all share. And I love what I'm gonna come back to this a lot, guys. I'm gonna bore you in advance with the phrase that Emma used, and that is all policy is climate policy. I didn't think about it that way, Devin, but all policy is climate policy. Let me give you guys a specific thing, and I didn't want to put Emma on the spot with this, but I'm sure she has some thoughts on it. Deportation of people, getting rid of folks, sending folks to other places. And by the way, did you hear this knucklehead said that he wants to now talk about people who are criminals, sending them to other countries? He said that yesterday during a press conference, Devin. These are still citizens and people that are repeat offenders. I thought he must have a mirror up. But anyhow, the crops that are not going to get picked, and I'm not a scientist, this is just common sense, and I understand how this works. If there's going to be crops that don't get picked in parts of the country, produce and all the rest, because people are afraid to go to work because of the fear of deportation and all the rest that comes with this conversation. And those crops rot because of an executive order, i.e. policy. This is where what Emma said makes so much sense. And it's a dotted line of impact. And those things start to rot. Eventually, they can do a couple of things to harm the environment. One of them is kick off a methane gas that will affect that immediate community. 1. 2, if they die and have to be replanted, that comes with a cost to the business that suffered that loss, which then impacts the environment because now we've got to wait for those products to regrow themselves after having been replanted. So this is what went through my brain. I'm not trying to be a scientist here. I'm just looking at the connected tissue of all policy is climate policy. And so the things that Trump is doing, not just getting us out of the Paris Agreement, but mishandling immigration, which he did and is about to do again, affects us and affects our climate. As strange as that may seem. Guys, it's always great to be with you. Thanks for being with us today. As always, take a deep breath and make your life count. We'll see you tomorrow.